Welcome from the biggest and probably one and only true desert in Europe. Located in South Iberian Peninsula, Tabernas Desert is place when I will tell you about the biggest, in future biggest, religion in the world. This religion now is in the second place with 1,600,000,000 followers. And third in the rank is Hinduism with 1 billion followers, and the biggest Christianity has nowadays 2,200,000,000, but I think that Muslims will grow in numbers, and in becoming 20 years or maybe 30 years will be number one religion in the world, because number of children in Muslim families is significantly bigger than in Christian families. For example, in Europe we have a number of children on the level 1.2. On the other hand, in Pakistan we have 3.8 children per woman, and Pakistan is only one Islam country with 240 million people. So they are growing very rapidly, and they are, as you know, expanding on the world. And today, from this desert, I will tell you the early story of Islam, how it began in Arabic desert, and how the Muhammad became the prophet, how he achieved his political and religious goals during his life. After his death, I will describe you the reign of four just caliphates, the four men who are known in Muslim tradition as the rightful. And then I will tell you about Umayyad Caliphate, the biggest, the strongest, the first united Islamic Caliphate, who fall apart in the middle of 8th century. So stay with me. This is Ziemowit about history, and today I will tell you about beginning of Islam. Muhammad was born in around 570 AD in a wealthy trading family. His whole family was doing business in trade, and as most of the rich people in Mecca. Mecca was a very important trading emporium in Arabian Peninsula, on the route from the south of the peninsula to Jerusalem, to Damascus, and to Byzantine Empire. Mecca was also very important from the religious point of view, because in the center of the city was sacred black rock, a meteorite which was sacred for all nearby Arab tribes, and they worship the rock. They worship various gods. They had, some people say, 300 temples in Mecca devoted to different gods, and this holy city was so sacred that warlike Arab people were always respecting the sanctity of Mecca, and they were never fighting in the city and around the city. So the trade and pilgrimage, because people were coming to the sacred rock, worshipping and praying, and pilgrims were very important source of income for the wealthy Mecca families. And young Muhammad was also training from the beginning of his life to become a merchant in future. So when he was 6, for example, he took his first big route. He traveled to Damascus with his family, and he was seeing a lot of different people. He was seeing different world, and he get a lot of contacts with Christians there and with Jews. Also, Christians and Jews live in Mecca, because it was very important cosmopolitan city So very different religions were present there. And I think Muhammad was a little envy for Jews, for their nice, straight religion, for their talent through commerce, and it will be a significant impact for the Muslim movement in future. But now Muhammad was young, and at age 25 he got married with a 40 years old widow, but this widow was very rich, so this marriage was very important for his future life. But then he will get many more wives, and his favorite wife will be Aisha. Aisha will be a beautiful daughter of one of the biggest families in Mecca, the most important family, merchant family in the city. In year 610, Muhammad went to a cave, and there he met an angel, and angel gave him inspiration. So he went back, and now he was preaching that he wanted to create better kind of Judaism, because he was very impressed by this religion, and he wanted to put a new spirit to this old Abraham religion. His first followers were his family, and then some other people around him were converting to Islam, this early Islam. His main message to the people was that you have to be honest, poor, you have to give wealth to the other poor people, and there's only one God, Allah. There are no other gods. You can worship only Allah, and we are all equal in the eyes of this Almighty God. And in the beginning, this was not a problem for anyone, because in Mecca there were several big religions and a lot of smaller gods. Everyone was worshipping whatever he wants, so there was no problem that Muhammad is coming up with a new religion. But after a few years, this new Muhammad's religion was a bit a problem for the merchant elite of the city, because Muhammad don't wanted other people to worship other gods. And as I told you before, pilgrimage to Mecca was one of the biggest source of income for the wealthy families of the city. And Muhammad was trying to ban these worships, and he was telling everyone that only Allah is worth worshipping, so these old temples should be closed, and the tension between him and the powerful families in Mecca was growing. And finally, in year 622, Muhammad was kicked off from the city. In fact, he escaped, because probably he would be killed if he didn't do so. And he escaped to Medina, and this is the beginning of Islam history, this journey of Muhammad and his early followers from Mecca to Medina, city located north to Mecca. In Medina, he was warmly welcomed, and he was expanding his influence, his political and religious influence. But there were a lot of Jews in this city, and he wanted to convince them that Islam is a better form of Judaism. But unfortunately for him, these whole Jews were not willing to convert to Islam, so he made a plot in which some of them were exiled and their belongings were taken by the Islam community. But this wasn't enough for him, so he started to make ambushes on caravans traveling from Mecca to Damascus. This was very profitable job for him, because these caravans were very rich. It was not something like few camels with some bags. The caravan in this period of time was a very big endeavor with hundreds, sometimes thousands of animals, hundreds of people going with these animals, and very, very big load of very precious materials on the camels. So attacking this big adventure was also risky, and he need a lot of soldiers to fight with the caravan guard. So he started to make battles on the desert to crush these caravans and to take their wealth. But he was successful, and he was growing in power, and different Arabic tribes from around Medina and from around Mecca was joining him. And finally he made a big battle on the desert against Mecca's forces, and he won. And after the battle, a few years later, he came under the walls of Mecca with his followers, and the people, the nobles in Mecca, seeing that he is very powerful, they let him go inside the city, and some noble families converted to Islam on this day, and among these people were Umayyad family. Umayyad family will be very important for the future history of Islam. As Muhammad came to the city, he enforced a ban of worshipping any other gods than Allah. They destroyed the statues, they destroyed the temples, and now he told them that the Black Rock is only for Muslims. No one else can get even close to this holy rock, and Muslims are obliged to pilgrimage at least once per life to this holy rock. And now a lot of tribes, Arabic tribes around the Mecca city and in whole Arabic Peninsula, who are doing their pilgrimage to Mecca as usual, now they have to take Islam as their religion, because otherwise they couldn't touch the holy rock in which they believed. This was the way in which he faster converted a lot of Arab tribes around the city, and they did it gladly without big pressure. And no one was in fact checking if they are really believing in Islam or if they really abandoned their old gods. They may as well came back to their village, worship their old gods, and in this period of time it was not a problem for anyone. And in year 632, Muhammad fell sick and died. And this is the start of the era of 4 faithful caliphs, which are very important for the Islamic tradition. And now I will tell you a little bit about them. Let's now look at the world in year 632, at the time of Muhammad's death, a year 0 for the followers of Islam. The world was ruled by 2 main powers: Byzantium, reaching from Spain in the west through Africa to Syria in the east, and from the Sahara Desert in the south to Danube River in the north. And the Sassanid Empire, on the other hand, lasted for 400 years in Mesopotamia and extended its territories to all neighboring countries. In addition, there was a strong Visigothic kingdom in Spain and Khaganate of powerful Avars north of the Danube River. There were constant wars between Byzantium and Sassanids. In 619, the Sassanids captured Jerusalem, which was a joyful event for Jews living there. The liberation from Byzantines was the end of Christian occupation of them, so they began murdering Christians remaining in the Holy City. Later, the Sassanids conquered Egypt and part of Anatolia. It seems that they would finally break the power of Byzantium and gain supremacy in the world. However, Emperor Heraclius saved Byzantium. In 626, he set out a military campaign deep into Persia to defeat the Shah, and did not turn back even then, taking advantage of his departure in collaboration with the Persians. The Avars and Slavs besieged Constantinople in huge numbers. The future of the empire was at great risk. However, Constantinople managed to defeat itself against this great invasion, and a year later, near Nineveh, in the thick fog that eliminated the power of the Persian archers, Heraclius led his troops to victory, turning around the fate of the struggle between the two powers and regaining the recently lost territories in the east. At the same time, Muhammad's followers were chasing caravans through the desert, and who would care about them then? 5 years later, these two powers were still weakened after the Great War that took place in the first part of 7th century. And it was then that a new wave of invaders poured out from the Arabian Peninsula. The first caliph after Muhammad's death was Abu Bakr, a wealthy follower of Muhammad from the very beginning of his teachings in 610. He was also his father-in-law because his daughter Aisha was favorite wife of Muhammad, which he had dozens. The new caliph, Abu Bakr, at the beginning of his rule, had to deal with the strong opposition of desert tribes who considered themselves subordinate to the Prophet but not to Abu Bakr. In the first year of his rule, he drowned the Arabian Peninsula in the Sea of Blood, to such an extent that the followers of Islam saw that soon no one would remember the words of the Prophet, because they will all die in fighting. So they decided to write them down, and this is how the Quran was created. Now that the Arab tribes has been united, Abu Bakr announced the need to convert other infidels and called for holy war for Allah, al-Jihad. As so, after a year, Abu Bakr united the Arabian Peninsula and immediately attacked north against Byzantium, weakened by the wars with the Sassanids. In July 634, there was a great battle at Janar, where an Arab army of 20,000 defeated Byzantine forces of 40,000 men. It was certainly a shock for the Greeks. Never had such a powerful army emerged from Arabia. After this victory, Abu Bakr began to besiege Damascus, but under the walls of this great city he died. The next leader of United Islamic Caliphate was Umar. He was ruling for 10 years, and under his command they made enormous successes on every front they endeavor. First, they fought very big Byzantine army near the river Yarmouk. Emperor's brother Theodore himself led 50,000 men to defeat Arabs, and they bring to the battle only 30,000. But the battle was very bloody, and thanks to superior command and greater morale of Islamic army, they won this great Byzantine army, and it opened them doors to reach Byzantine provinces. 2 years later, in 638, Jerusalem fallen under Islamic rule, and it will be under their command until First Crusade in year 1099. Almost half a century, Jerusalem will be now under Muslim jurisdiction. After conquering Jerusalem, they went to Egypt and also very easily conquered this rich Byzantine province. But meanwhile, they started to conquer Sassanid Empire, this great empire which was fighting with Byzantium since the 3rd century, now was crushed in almost 5 years by these Arab forces. It was amazing, it was enormous victory, very swift, and no one expected that such a barbaric nomads from the Arabian Peninsula will be able to crush such an empire in such a short period of time. But this empire was revolted inside. They were struggle for power between the ruling family, and also they were very weak after the war with Byzantines, because Byzantines, as you may remember, came here in 627 under Heraclius, and they lose great battle on Nineveh plain, and after this battle they lose the war with Byzantines, and they were quite weak. So Arabs pointed them in the perfect timing, and if they come 50 years earlier, for example, when in Byzantium Justinian the Great was ruling and when Sassanid Empire was strong, Arabs will surely be defeated and they will not expand their religion so quickly as they did in the middle of 7th century. Uthman, the 3rd Caliph, was member of powerful Umayyad family from Mecca. They were very rich merchants, and his wealth was so big, and he was sponsoring the early Islam society so much that Prophet himself, Muhammad, gave him 2 of his daughters as his wife. So Uthman was very blessed by the Muhammad himself, and now he took the power, but he was very concentrated on his own clan. He was giving every important position in the caliphate to his own family members, and he was collecting a lot of money for his clan. He was not splitting the spoils of war as it was used to be before. But nevertheless, Islam was expanding during his reign. It was expanding north to Armenia, it was expanding east to the borders of India, and expanding west to present-day Tunisia. But when he was building his magnificent palace in Medina, people started to revolt against him because he was not obeying the Muslim rule of being pure, being modest, being focused on Quran, on the afterlife. He was focusing on the pleasures of earthly life, and early Muslims doesn't like it. So they said to him, "We remember the great prophet Muhammad, we remember what he said, and you are doing opposite. You are not right Muslim. Change your behavior or leave the caliphate for Ali, for example. Ali, who was prophet's cousin." But Uthman was not taking into account these voices, and when the crowd revolted against him, he was assassinated, and now Ali, the very close relative of Prophet Muhammad, was new 4th Caliph of the United Islamic Caliphate. But Ali was also not very strong leader. And now Ali cousin of Prophet Muhammad, will be the new caliph. But not everyone will agree with this decision, and in particular Muawiyah, the governor of Damascus, will be opposed to this decision. What's more, he will blame that Ali was supporting the crowd that slay the former caliph Uthman. So he wanted to avenge member of his Umayyad clan and revolted against Ali. Two great armies met on the desert near Safin, and they were trying to negotiate. They were trying to not spill the Muslim blood. They were trying to make some consensus to find out who should be the righteous caliph, and they come up with idea. They will find some wise men who will read the Quran, and they will find out who should be the true caliph of the Islamic Caliphate. So they choose this wise man collective, and then they went back to get their supporters to support their claim with force, if this wise man will not decide as they wish to. But during this preparation, Ali was seen as a weak leader who was slaying his opponents, and finally he was injured by a poisonous sword, which was a revenge for a massacre that he made in one of the towns in which they don't wanted to support him. So he died in year 661, and now Muawiyah I will be caliph of Islamic Caliphate, and Muawiyah is from Umayyad family. They will be known as Umayyad Caliphate, and they will reign for another almost 100 years.
The first of the Umayyad Caliphs, Muawiyah I, made a bold attempt to conquer Constantinople. However, the 5 years long siege ended in complete failure, and eventually he even agreed to pay tribute to the emperor to ensure peace on Byzantine border. The next direction of the caliphate's expansion was Africa, where they wanted to occupy the area of today's Tunisia. There they encountered strong resistance from the local inhabitants, consisting of the remainings of Byzantine troops, Vandals, who had their stayed there until the mid-6th century, and Berber tribes. They were all led by the brave, red-haired Princess Al-Kahina. They held off the Arab onslaught for several years, but finally perished, and the followers of Prophet could now reach the Atlantic Ocean. From this bridgehead, a small expedition to the Iberian Peninsula set off in 711, and it arrived at the perfect moment, because the Visigothic king was betrayed by his subjects and lost the decisive battle with the Arabs. Taking advantage of this gift from the fate, or rather a gift from Allah, they brought reinforcements very quickly, and Spain was conquered by Arabs in a very quick pace. And the history of Spain would be shaped by the presence of the Arabs for the next 800 years. The expansion of Islam also took place in Central Asia. There, at the beginning of 8th century, they invaded Transoxania, and the people living there sent envoys asking for help to the Chinese Tang dynasty. Unfortunately, the Tang had other problems on their mind at the time and failed to protect the rich cities of the Silk Road from Islamic occupation. In 717, another great attempt to conquer Constantinople took place. But after a year, the Arabs again had to leave the walls of the city, suffering huge losses. They also tried to subjugate the Khazar Khaganate north of Caucasus Mountains, and despite great investitions for this purpose, they failed to permanently introduce Islam to the people north of Caucasus. Finally, the great wave of Arab expansion hit the rocks on which it crashed. One of them was their defeat in France, where Charles Martel stopped them in 732 at Poitiers, and the other one was in 740 when Leo the Isaurian also defeated them in Anatolia and stopped their expansion into Byzantine possessions. Nevertheless, during the Umayyad dynasty, Muslim rule expanded to colossal properties. They cover area of 20 million square kilometers, and it was one of the biggest empires in history. However, these military defeats and instability in the succession led to civil war in 740 and the eventual fall of the Umayyad Caliphate in 750. It was replaced by the Abbasids in Iran, the Fatimids in Egypt, and later Caliphate of Cordoba in Spain. Thank you for your attention. I hope that the history of the origins of Islam was interesting for you.